into our questions about real estate. So many of you don't know, I am currently in the process of looking for a home. I will be a first-time home buyer. So there were just so many questions, and when Elias and I crossed paths, I never felt like I was being rushed into doing something or making a decision that I didn't want to do. And the biggest thing is that he was just super informative. There were just so many things that I learned or am learning currently throughout the process. So my goal for these videos is for you all to walk away with some knowledge that you didn't know coming into this process. So the first thing that I had super confused and I got a bunch of mixed information on was the down payment versus the closing costs. So help us out. What is the difference between a down payment and closing costs?
Down payment, closing costs. Okay, so to layman terms, your down payment is inclusive of your closing costs.
Okay.
Your lender factors out several details. He puts together a sheet per se of the estimated cost or whatever it may be. So in essence, to qualify for a specific loan program, he'll say, hey, you know, this loan program requires 3.5 down or requires 3% down, whatever it may be. And on top of that, he'll factor in other factors such as his loan fees, credit check, appraisal fees, et cetera, et cetera. So they'll kind of like package those up. They'll give you a specific dollar amount, and at the closing table, you'll bring whatever that full amount is, which is roughly, quote unquote, whatever the down payment is, 3%, 3.5%, whatever it may be, you'll bring that amount to the closing table.
But just one piece of advice that you commonly see first-time home buyers don't know.
That they don't know. So I'm going to package it, right?
Okay.
Planning is important, right?
Okay.
You just can't jump into the equation without a quote-unquote plan.
Okay.
That plan would also be consistent with the idea of you saving. A lot of people get into the market, and there are great programs that exist that require minimum money down, right? However, to buy a house from a conventional standpoint, you still need cash, right?
Okay.
Whether it be closing costs, whether it be down payment, as we mentioned, those things kind of run in coordination. To also be competitive in this market, things are a little bit different in terms of like, hey, here's this great program that I qualify for. The question is that will you be the most competitive? Chances are you won't be without quote unquote the cash on hand. So again, plan, savings is huge. Also being able to be taught, right? One thing that agents, which makes it difficult, is people that don't listen.
Okay.
We know oftentimes we talk to family, friends, hair beauticians, pastors, mechanics, everybody. We talk about, hey, we're buying a house, or I'm buying a house, and everybody has their interjections, right? And so they kind of come in half cocked with the idea that, hey, I know what's going on, I know what to do, et cetera, and they kind of like begin this condescending nature towards the agent, right?
Okay.
And so that's not going to kind of put you guys in the best headspace to kind of work together. The object is for you guys to work together for a common goal. This is professional, right? And so that's, I think, again, just kind of packaging all that together, I think that's more so the most common issues and or things to kind of be aware of on the forefront.
So I just want to recap what I heard. So the first thing that I heard was plan out what you want to do, what locations, what's your price range. The next thing I heard was even though you might qualify for a program that will assist you with down payments, you want to make sure that you have some type of cash on hand just in the event that you need it. Because you never know. That's just life. You just don't know what's going to happen. Well, the third thing, that I heard was be teachable. Like, let the realtor be the realtor. That is their specific ministry. Let them do what they do as a professional, but just be open to gaining the knowledge that they're going to be pouring into you.
Correct. Absolutely.
That was really good. So I definitely think that planning is a big part of it. Now, one thing that I have personally learned was that going into this process, I thought that I knew exactly what I wanted. As I started looking at homes, I was like, this is totally different. It did. And my mind has totally changed on what area. As you guys know, I had a pretty big life event happen at the end of last year. So that was something that really changed my outlook on the process as far as location, style, So definitely be open to your plans changing.
That's something else I think I kind of missed is the idea of the unrealistic expectations that exist with buyers. Again, people come into the market expecting one thing, right? And the reality is based on your budget, based on location, which run hand in hand.
Yes.
It often reveals such, right? Especially here in the DMV. I tell people all the time, hey, you start out with this idea, hey, I want to be, in whatever proximity to DC, right? And they want all these things that go along with it. But when I sit down and kind of tell them, like, hey, you know what? To want all these things and be as close as we're talking about to the district, it's going to cost you more. Versus you kind of like stepping away from the equation and saying, I may need to go out to the suburbs, wherever it may be, and kind of get those things, right?
Gotcha.
So that idea, the unrealistic expectations that exist is drastic, and it's a problem.
I believe it.
And like breaking that is like taking candy from a baby, right? Because it's so
I
right.
believe it.
So yeah, that's I think those as well as the idea of being pre-qualified. You are wasting your absolute time, the time of others, if you're not pre-qual.
Do you find a lot of people that go out looking for homes that are not pre-qualified?
You would be shocked. Absolutely.
I definitely would be.
Right. The reason is that, again, this is 11 years, I understand people, right? Most people are just afraid of the idea of someone looking into their deep dark
Their secrets.
or whatever
all
it may
the bones
be.
in the closet come spilling out.
Right, and they don't necessarily want to put everything out on the table, right? Because like I posted something like this, I think last week, that people often do business with who they like, know, and trust, right? And so when they meet an agent, typically there's this barrier that exists between the both until, like kind of what you just mentioned, that comfort level exists between the both of them, right? And so it's always like, hey, I'm gonna keep my bag of tricks over here, and the more and more you make me feel comfortable, the more and more I'm gonna kind of open up.
I can see that.
Right. And so being pre-qualified, the funny part is that it doesn't even necessarily involve me as the agent. It's more so your conversation with your lender. Right. And so even if I tell people all the time, even if you approach the situation to where, hey, I'm gonna get pre-qualified, and let's just say worst case scenario, I'm not pre-qual right now. The only thing that can come out of that is good stuff. And I tell people this all the time, and people I don't know if they believe it or not, but the reality is that now a lender is able to kind of peek into your situation. You're not qualified, but hey, if you do A, B, C, or D, you'll be in a position to buy, right? And so what it is that people, they have their own idea, right, coming in, because what we just talked about from information from friends, family, whoever, hey, I need to get my score up to an 800, or I need to, pay off this car, or I need to pay off this student loan. The reality is that only a lender can look into your situation and tell you exactly what you need, because you may be doing too much. You may be trying to knock out this car, and this lender tells you, hey, you only knock out $300 on this credit card, and you're good to go. And so that's kind of something that exists in the world of pre-qualification, that the people, if they kind of dispel that idea of being ashamed and whatever it may be, at least have that conversation with the lender to know exactly where you stand at. And that's going to put you in a better position.
And you actually put me onto game early. You mentioned something. You were like, what information is your lender giving you? We were having a conversation about pre-qualifications, excuse me. And I can't remember right off the top of my head what the conversation was about, but he was like, why is your lender not giving you this information? I was like, well, what do you mean? And he was like, have you shopped different lenders? And I was like, no, I had this lender. My loyalty was in this lender because, like you mentioned, this is who I was familiar with. I was comfortable with this particular lender. So my brain never fathom going to a different lender. That's just not where my brain went to.
The conversation that exists and the phrase that we've heard throughout life is that when lenders compete, you win as a borrower. So the reality is that based on certain conditions, whether this lender is a broker, whether this lender is an individual lender, if he's going to give you money from a local perspective, or whatever it may be, they have different avenues. They have different ways that they can kind of approach you as a client. And I also tell people that they'll ask, hey, what lender should I use and why, and et cetera, et cetera. The reason is, and the reality is that local lenders, just my 2 cents, not steering anyone in any direction, but local lenders have a better grasp on you as an individual, I can say, Mr. Local Lender, pull my credit file. They'll say, hey, what's going on? You have 2 cards, 2 payment, et cetera, right? And so you now can talk to that lender instead of a national lender looking at your file and say, hey, they see the same exact thing, they hit deny, right? A local lender sometimes will pick up the phone, hey, what's going on? Can you talk to me a little bit? Oh yeah, this was a scenario, I just paid it off a month ago, or whatever, and so they can kind of automate the situation, and they're more flexible, and their ideas to work with you become a lot more easier, right? And so that's the reality with dealing with lenders, and not just that, they can quote you different rates, et cetera, based on those factors. So that makes all the world of a difference.
I have a story about this too, right? So I started this process maybe 2 years ago. Life happens, and the first few lenders that I ran into, they were like, well, you got to pay off everything. And I was like, what you mean pay off everything? If paying off everything was an option, I would have done it, right? And I promise you, I ran into I know off the top of my head, I ran into about 3 lenders that before they did anything with me, they were like, no, you got to pay off everything. Student loans, car note. I was like, that's not even realistic, okay? And so you do have to really be careful and find the importance in working with a lender that really sees you as an individual, because I think sometimes, like you said, people get caught up in this is what you have on paper, but they don't know the circumstances. And I personally found that once I found a lender that spoke to me as a human being, that got to know me as a person, he was like, okay, well, this is your situation, tackle this. Like you said, we think we got to pay off everything. And they're like, no, just do A, B, C, and D. And once I got through my list, I was like, all right, now I can start the process. It makes a world of difference.
Even before you get through the list, you have a list. It becomes more realistic.
It does.
To the idea of, hey, I need to do this, I need to do that. Like, it gives you that little bit of confidence.
It does.
Right? And towards you, to where you're getting to that point, you're knocking things out, and it just feels good as an individual, right? And it's all the much more rewarding as an individual, right? So, talked about as well is that when looking for a lender, most people don't understand that, hey, I'm trying to get pre-qualified, right? And what happens? I know people thinking that right now. Like, what if I shop multiple lenders? They're going to pull my credit multiple times, right?
Right there.
And so the reality is, yes, they are. But the thing is that most people don't understand is that when they pull your credit, it's only going to count once. Only going to count once against you, but within a certain day, rolling day time period.
You told me that too, actually.
Right. So typically it's within 30 days. So my thing is that if you're looking, buy a home, get pre-qualified, right? Go for the moon, right? I don't care if you use one lender or if you pull your credit one lender or 100 lenders. It's only going to count once against you from a negative aspect, right? Because what happens is lenders respect you as a buyer. They want you to shop around. They're not going to penalize you for shopping multiple lenders, much like how you would buy a car, right? That's going to hurt you. There's no real benefit behind that reality. But the point is that in shopping for a mortgage, this is a 30-year commitment, right? And so they want you to shop around. It's not going to hurt you. Again, the only thing that can come out of that is only good things. Just my 2 cents. Right?
So y'all hear that? Do not be afraid to shop around. It does not hurt you, because I do think that is a misconception. Is that, like you said, loyalty. I can only go to one person, or if my credit is already so-so, if I continuously get dinged, then that's just going to hurt me in the long run. But not shopping around is really what hurts you. So go ahead, put your shopping shoes on, put your good wigs on, your comfy clothes on, and get to shopping, okay?
Absolutely. And most companies, they're very simplistic, right? They have online process that is very automated. They'll pretty much run you through, boom, either approved or not. And again, from a local perspective, 9 times out of 10, they're going to pick up the phone and call you. Or you can pick up the phone and call them. And so it just makes it all the better.
All right. So then the next hardball question, and I follow a few real estate agents on the Instagram. And like you said, that's a rabbit hole. That is a rabbit hole. So I have always heard realtors don't like FHA loans. We prefer conventional. We don't like VA. What is the difference between FHA loans and conventional loans?
Cool. Yeah. So the difference is, the reality is, all right, FHA loan. FHA is a federally insured loan. Right? Been around since like the 30s. During the Great Depression, whatever. What was going on is that kind of what we saw like 2009, market crash, right? Great Depression. they wanted to stimulate the market, right?
Okay.
And so they created this idea of federally insured loan because we want people and herds to kind of get out there and buy homes, right? But we're going to do that because we're going to make this possible by making things easier for buyers, right?
Okay.
So one thing about the FHA loan is that there's lower credit requirements, there's lower down payment requirements,
Okay.
right? And so again, it's a federally insured loan. So that's the gist of an FHA loan,
Okay.
right?
Didn't know that.
Yep, federally insured loan. The reality is that in comparison to a conventional loan isn't necessarily insured. That's the main difference, the
Okay.
insurance perspective of it. Conventional loans are more, from a buyer perspective, more of your skin in the game.
Oh, okay.
So they're going to require more out of you, right? It's going to be
Okay.
stricter to qualify.
Okay.
Down payments are going to be higher. Your credit, the credit that you need to obtain this is going to be higher, right?
Okay.
And so it's going to be more of your skin in the game. But the reality is that when you use a conventional loan, it makes your ability to purchase more flexible.
Okay.
So now you can buy things like foreclosures, right?
Mhm.
You can buy homes that need work, right? Even from an appraisal perspective, and the idea of waiving an appraisal or conventional aspect, you can waive an appraisal with that. For the FHA perspective, you have to get an appraisal. With a conventional loan, you don't necessarily have to.
Oh, I didn't
But
know
they-
that.
Well, it depends on the lender, right?
Okay,
The lender may
okay.
require it, sometimes he may not. Just,
Okay.
that's a very important question to ask lender
Okay.
and shop around. But the reality is that you have the option,
Okay.
right? And so that's the main gist of it. FHA interest rates are typically lower than conventional loans as well.
Did y'all know that?
Yeah.
Let me know down below in the comments if y'all knew that.
Yeah, FHA loans are typically lower than conventional loans interest rates. The reason is because with a conventional loan, you can buy a property and use it as an investment property,
Okay.
right? FHA typically wants you to live there, or your
Okay.
intention is to live there
Right.
for at least a year or so,
Okay,
right? From
okay.
anywhere from a month to a year.
Okay.
And so the reality is that's why, right? Because you're going to treat it less of whatever it may be, but they understand that from a conventional standpoint, you're less likely to default because you have more money in the equation, right?
Okay.
But an FHA loan, hey, risk is there, so no, we need you living in here,
Right.
et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, those are two things that exist as well in terms of the difference between the two.
Okay. I hope that everybody has pen and paper because he is giving out some good game right now. So, listen, y'all need an agent. I co-sign them.
Right, thanks.
All right, so let me ask. So, getting into real estate, I feel like that's such a popular industry.
Yeah.
Like that's the it thing to do right
Right.
now because I think the idea is that people get to work independently. They get to like you just have so much freedom and flexibility. How did you get started in real estate?
So I got started. It's funny, right?
Mhm.
So initially, I wanted to get started. I wanted to start in real estate when I was like 18, right?
Okay.
I knew some real weird reason, or some, I don't know, behind it that I wanted to do real estate.
Okay.
And I kind of dragged my feet, right? To where like, hey, I'm too young. I'm 18. Who's gonna believe me? Things
Like,
of that
who's
nature,
listening
right?
to me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was very logical, right? But the reality is that you can be 18 and still do it. But what got me going is like I always had a passion for it, right? And the passion was by way of investment,
Okay.
right? I began to kind of read books, the Rich Dad Poor Dads, the books out here that exist to where like it opens the idea of investing. So that kind of got me interested. Then I had a friend, mentor, shout out my guy Ron, that kind of put me on to the aspect of investing as well. And it just opened like the door, like man, the possibility was endless. So me and Ron sat down one day, like, hey man, you don't thought about getting your license? No, I didn't. You know what I mean? Kind of, but
not really like.
yeah, I was so
full
young,
thing, yeah.
right? It was kind of that scenario. So I
It
was
was like a thought and pass.
right. And so I think I was like 23. You kind of like, hey man, go do it. And so that's what I did, and I aced it, like because it was just so. I'm a nerd, it just that topic it's deep in me, right?
Like
Yeah,
it was just ingrained.
Right.
It's in your blood. It's in your DNA.
right. And so that by way of investing, that got me interested in the idea of just becoming a sales agent.
Okay.
And so that's what kind of got me going in that particular avenue.
Okay. do you have any advice that you would give for people that are considering getting into real estate? Like I said, because I do think that people think, oh, it's just so easy. I personally don't think that real estate is easy at all. I have been fortunate enough to cross paths with several real estate agents, and they're like, girl, it is nothing easy about this industry. Like, you really have to be self-made, self-motivated, all the selves. You got to be on your own.
You got to be a self-starter. And so I think the tips, well, I will pose a question to a person asking me that question. In terms of, like, to get started, are you talking about the idea of becoming an agent, or are you wanting to become an investor? Those are two different avenues. Both of which are going to require a lot of time, effort, sacrifice from you. It's going to require networking. It's going to require the idea of just being able to kind of like throw out everything you know about real estate and really know, right? So from a mentor perspective, I co-sign that idea. Most people hear that, like, oh yeah, you know, scam, yada yada yada. But find somebody that you trust, you know, whatever it may be, and kind of let them hold your hand, and kind of give you, not just from a technical standpoint, but like how we can talk, right? From a real life expectation, right? You know, in terms of closing costs, this is what it looks like. All right, the lender's going to see it this way, but let me break it down to you to a sense of to where you understand it and to where it resonates with you. So when you actually sit down, if you want to get licensed as an agent, now this stuff becomes much more simplistic to digest, to where you're able and ready to kind of like go out there and knock out the test. So to become an agent, of course, you sit through course hours. I don't remember it so long ago, but I think it's something like 100, no, depending on where you are, I think it's something like between 60 and 80 hours to become a regular real estate agent. I'm working my broker's license right now, and that's something like 200 some odd hours that I'm going through. So yeah, you sit through the course hours. You get certified from a course perspective. You pass that. Once you become certified from a course perspective, you're now qualified to sit for the state perspective and the national perspective. And so that's typically how you do it. It's important, like I said, to find a mentor, find a good school, just be open to the idea of just learning. From an investment standpoint, mentorship. There's no way I can slice it or dice it. To make money in real estate is something completely different than just out here selling real estate.
So to be an investor, do you have to be a licensed?
No. You don't have to be a licensed agent at all. But to be successful at it, you need to know what's going on. And so it's going to require a lot of conversations with agents. It's going to be a lot required to take a lot of agents to lunch, you know, to kind of pick their mind. Right. Mentorship is vital.
Now, you and I, we've had this conversation, I believe, maybe several times. I feel like I always have this conversation. So y'all know that we're really big on generational wealth over here.
Bingo.
So I think, and again, this is stuff that I'm learning in my mid-30s. This is something that I'm really starting to learn because, you know, I didn't come from a environment where they taught us how to create generational wealth because, you know, my family, we were just making it. So, you know, I was a first generational grad. I was the first person to like move away from home and stay away from home. And you just don't grow up. You know, our parents just taught you to go to school, get a job. They never taught us to be entrepreneurs, how to work for yourself. How important, or does real estate play a part in generational wealth?
It's the most primitive. There's no way you can generate and or pass on generational wealth without real estate. It's not possible.
Did y'all hear that?
And especially, you know, passing Juneteenth, you know, over the weekend, and just the conversation, the climate of the country, your reparations, et cetera, et cetera. Like, that's why that conversation is so important. Not to get too political, but the reality is that when a person goes from generation to generation, and I want to pay for college or I want to start a business, you can tap into equity that exists in property and real estate, right? You don't necessarily have to go to or go about different avenues and getting a business loan or whatever it may be. You tap right into the equity of a home. And when people transfer and or pass down generational wealth in this country, and especially people of color, the reality is it sets you up in a much better position, and it makes you as competitive as you need to be in this world. So is it important? Absolutely. There's no way, from a long-term legacy standpoint, that you can transfer generational wealth to where your grandkids or your children's children are blessed, behind that idea without that type of avenue. Like, you need that. It's primitive.
Right.
And
I think the other big point to make here as well is that I don't think it's ever too late to start creating that, because I think for some people, I think our generation is a little bit different, but I think for older people, they get into this mindset where I have to work and it's too late for me to really start creating that generational wealth. I'll just pass it down. I'll let my kids take the reins on that. But at some point, you have to be in a place where you're ready to break that generational curse and really like, all right, let me put this on my back. Let me get this done, because if you don't do it, who does?
Right. I seen the meme. This one floating on the internet, and they're like, being the one to break these generational curses. Like, bro, it's hard.
It's hard.
You know.
I be feeling like that sometimes. Looking at me like, for real, y'all, my shoulders. Can I get a break real quick?
Right. And so when you put, quote unquote, your legacy on your shoulder, I mean, it's hard, it's stressful, but it's worth it.
It is.
And like you said, I think our generation is, quote unquote, the generation to see that, right? And so, and to kind of piggyback on that and just kind of go back into the conversation about loan types, is that what I see, when I've seen just from us, right, people of color standpoint, is that like I see a lot of foreclosures, I see a lot of short sales, right? And one thing that I want to jump into is the idea of reverse mortgages, right? And man, like, let me tell you, like, I've met so many people who are 60, 70 that are just so selfish as it pertains to generational wealth and transferring that wealth, quote unquote. Hey, I've lived my life. They got to live their life, right? And so I'm going to enjoy my life while I'm here. Now, they're not thinking in terms of, their kids and their grandkids and what it means to transfer wealth and what it means to just own land in itself and what you can do. You can rent land, you can lease land.
And let me take a step back. So tell me, what is a reverse mortgage? For those people that out here that don't know, I've had my own personal battle or experience with reverse mortgages with my family, but for the people that don't know, tell us what that is.
Reverse mortgage is typically the FHA idea of, hey, I have a home, I've held it for X amount of years, right? I'm getting older. Expenses are piling up with medical bills or whatever, you name it, right? Et cetera,
Life.
right? And so older people, when you reach a certain threshold, I think like 62 is the mark, you have the ability to now tap into your equity to where your home pays you every single month.
Okay.
And so you're sucking all the equity out of that home, right? And so, you're sucking out of your home, they're paying you whatever they're paying you per month, per year, whatever it may be. And now on the back end, you're taking this equity, you're spending it on things now, right? Bills and things that are just not going to generate any type of return on your investment. And so they're paying themselves. And what happens is that big mama, big daddy, they die. They die, right? And there's reverse equity. They suck all the equity out of that asset vehicle, quote unquote, and there's nothing there. So when they turn around to sell it, it makes it all the more complicated, right? And there's nothing that you can do from a transferability standpoint beyond somebody who's next in line to inherit, quote unquote, the idea of debt.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is that reverse mortgage type debt. You know what I mean? I'm not talking about a basic mortgage. I'm talking about a reverse mortgage that you sucked all of it out and enjoyed it, went on vacations, Cancun,
had a good time, living, as they say, living your best life here.
Right. And and pretty much you're setting up everybody that exists inside of your world for a nightmare, and it's super selfish. And I can speak on that from a personal standpoint. To me, look at it, and when I think about it, it's selfish. It's super selfish,
And I didn't, like I said, I'm learning a lot. Like in my 20s, I was out here, I was just living my best life, being totally selfish. But as I get into my 30s, I'm learning these things. And reverse mortgage, I definitely agree. Like you said, personal experiences. It's just not the way to go. But once again, I think some of that comes from lack of education, and that for me, that's just my standpoint. I think that, like I said, we had no one advising that generation, hey guys, that's not how you go, because it doesn't leave you with anything. And on top of that, it actually kind of burdens the ones that you leave behind, almost more than anything. Because when you're long gone, now they have to try to figure out how to deal with this. And it's not like a one and done, you gonna get in and out type of a process. That's just not how it works. It's not.
Bank shows no love.
Oh yeah, and keep in mind, that's what they were doing to the older generations.
Right.
They were at a place where they're like, just having a property was all that they wanted.
Right.
So they weren't in a mindset where our generation is. We're trying to have money and wealth for our children's children's children.
Right.
It's in the Bible, but at the time nobody was teaching them that. They were just trying to get a home. They were just trying to have a roof over their head and have some place to sleep at night. So they weren't thinking about how that was going to burden generations behind them, because nobody taught them the importance of generational wealth. And so I definitely think it's important that we teach the younger generations the importance of real estate, the importance of financial literacy. My brother, as you guys know, my brother's a pilot. He has his own flight school. So one of the things that him and I have been discussing was trying to have these conversations, because he came from, his mindset was, let's give our youth, our inner city youth, our underprivileged youth, a different aspect from basketball or football. Like, let's teach them that there are black pilots out there, and he gets that so often. He looks like me and you. So when he goes out, people tell him, and it irritates my skin. And I don't know if you get this as a realist. People say, "Well, you don't look like a pilot."
Yeah, what does that look like?
Yeah, I'm like, what? So because I'm not a 6'5" white man, does that qualify me not to, or disqualify me from being a pilot? But it irritates my life. But I said all that to say, he has a flight school, and so one of the things that we have been in talks about is, how do we have these conversations with our youth? Because when it's all said and done, everybody's not going to be a pilot. Everybody's not going to be a realtor. Everybody's, we have to have worker bees. There are some people that are going to work their entire life. They're not going to be the entrepreneur that their mother wants them to be. It's just not going to happen. But how do we teach that person that even though you're going to be a worker bee, you can still create your own generational wealth? Because your 9 to 5 is just not going to create that for you. It don't matter how much overtime you do, how much elbow rubbing you do, it's just not going to happen.
I think the generation to come, even like for instance, my daughter, she'll be 15 this year.
Okay.
Way more psychologically advanced than what I was. Like, 'cause I remember when I was 15. Like, I was there, but I wasn't all the way there, right? And so with the help of the internet and just, I think by exercising logic with the next generation, they'll see that, because I don't believe in generational curses, right? I think
you don't believe in generational
I believe in
curses?
generational ignorance.
Okay.
That are disguised as such, right? Because when you keep certain groups or certain topics away from the next generation, there's ignorance, right?
Yes.
And so all it is just a lack of knowledge, right? And so because there's a lack of knowledge between my generation and your generation, you're going to make these mistakes, right? And so that ignorance is what perpetuates throughout cycle and whatnot. And so our generation, quote unquote, again, I think we're getting it to where, like, hey, we have the desire to pass it on. We don't want to necessarily go through what we saw our peoples go through or whatever we went through, right? And so with just being logical with that next generation, because they get it. Like, you don't have to be super simplistic. Like, hey, let me break it down for you. A coloring book. Let me show you some pictures. You don't need to do it like that. Like, they get it, right? Yeah,
because they are so much more advanced than what we were. I agree with you on that one.
Right. And so just being logical with them and just showing them the benefit, I think that's going to open up the world of the inevitable,
Yes.
And just being transparent, because, like, the way I grew up, man, everything was a secret, right? Or what I didn't know, or whatever it may be, it was a disconnect, right? And so I didn't feel comfortable to ask certain questions, or
well, you couldn't.
I couldn't.
You
right?
Literally
Your
could
child's
not.
plays, right? Yeah. So
you got to leave the room.
Right.
Those are just not topics of conversations that children could have.
Right.
So like I said, but we do have to create those safe spaces for our children, for our children's children, to ask those questions, because again, when you hoard that information, it doesn't do anything for anyone. Not for yourself, not for anyone that comes up behind you, because hoarding up information is just a demise of your bloodline, our communities. it hurts everybody.
Right.
It hurts everybody. But all right, guys, I think we're about to go down a whole nother topic for another day. So what that sounds like to me is that you're gonna be coming back, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay,
For sure.
y'all heard him say he coming back, right?
Oh yeah, line it up. I got it.
He did. He showed up, no problem at all. We appreciate you so much. Is there any information that you want to give out to the people?
Kind of what I mentioned.
Okay.
Buying a house, get pre-qualified. Get those people out of your ear that think, you know, I meet a lot of people, right? They'll be on the tour with their mom, their grandma, their aunt, whatever it may be, right? Oh, babe, do it this way, do it that way. And, you know, when I bought my house 20 years ago, I did it this way. Out of date information is going to kill you in this market. So, you know, be teachable, save up your coins, and just have realistic expectations by way of finding an agent you know, like, and trust, having real conversations with them so they can be transparent with you. And just go down the rabbit hole like that.
Okay. So y'all heard that. I hope that y'all had y'all pen and paper out. Y'all were taking notes. Again, I don't think we got any of your social media. So where can the people find you? What's your contact information?
So I have 2 Instagrams. One is billionaire @billionaire_affirmation.
Okay.
My second one is what is it?
And by the way, I will have all of his information linked down below. Y'all give me some time. Y'all know I kind of struggle with this description box down below. It give me some time. It might not be up the same day, but it will eventually be down there, okay? So cut me some slack. I'm new to this. I'm learning.
My professional page is the_closer_Elias. ELIAS. So that's my other Instagram.
So y'all hear that? So I will make sure that I link all of his information below. You guys, that's it, and that's all for this video. I will see you next time, and remember to be you. That is your superpower. Bye, guys.
Take a minute, working back, party back, you know you ready. If it's up, then it's up, then it's up, then it's up.